Hello, and welcome to this English listening practice video. Today, you will hear the story of a man who became one of the most talked about figures in modern history. A man known for his confidence, controversy, and ambition, Donald Trump. In this video, you will learn about his journey from a boy growing up in New York City to becoming a billionaire businessman and the 45th President of the United States. You will see how his personality shaped his success, his failures, and his legacy. This story is not about politics. It's about mindset, risk, power, and what happens when confidence meets reality. So sit back, listen carefully, and learn English through one of the most fascinating modern life stories. Donald John Trump was born on June 14, 1946, in Queens, New York. He was the fourth of 5 children in the Trump family. His father, Fred Trump, was a successful real estate developer who built homes and apartments across New York City. His mother, Mary Ann, came from Scotland. She was known for her warmth, energy, and strong sense of discipline. From an early age, Donald showed confidence, sometimes too much. He loved to be noticed. He wanted to win every argument, every game, every challenge. His parents described him as energetic, bold, and sometimes difficult to control. When he was 13, his parents sent him to the New York Military Academy, a strict boarding school. They hoped it would teach him discipline and focus. At first, Donald resisted, but over time, he began to enjoy the structure and competition. He became a student leader, played sports, and learned how to command attention. He later said that this period taught him how to control his energy and how to lead. But deep inside, he still dreamed bigger. He wanted more than discipline. He wanted power, wealth, and fame. After high school, Trump attended Fordham University for 2 years and then transferred to the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, one of the top business schools in the country. There, he studied finance and economics. His classmates remember him as confident, ambitious, and always talking about real estate and success. He graduated in 1968 with a degree in economics and a burning desire to prove himself. At that time, the real estate world was dominated by his father, Fred. Donald could have taken an easy path, joining the family business quietly. But that wasn't his style. He wanted to make his own name, and he wanted to do it in Manhattan, the heart of New York City. In the early 1970s, Donald started working for his father's company, the Trump Organization. He learned how to buy, build, and manage properties. But while his father focused on affordable housing in the outer boroughs, Donald's eyes were fixed on skyscrapers, luxury, and fame. He wanted to build not just buildings, but monuments to success. He once said, "If you're going to think anyway, you might as well think big." That became his lifelong motto. By his late 20s, Donald had already begun to move independently. He wore sharp suits, spoke with confidence, and walked into rooms as if he owned them. He believed in the power of image, and he used it well. Lesson from this part: confidence can open doors, but without direction, it can also close them. Donald Trump learned early that attitude matters, but so do patience, timing, and vision. After graduating from the Wharton School in 1968, Donald Trump returned to New York City with big ambitions. His father, Fred Trump, had built a comfortable fortune by developing homes for middle-class families in Brooklyn, Queens. But Donald wanted something different. He wanted the bright lights, the power, and the prestige of Manhattan, the most competitive real estate market in the world. At first, few people took him seriously. He was young, brash, and full of self-confidence. He talked like a billionaire before he was one. But he had something others didn't, an incredible belief in the power of presentation. He knew that in business, perception often becomes reality. In the early 1970s, he began working on deals that would make his name known. One of his first big moves came in 1974, when he took over a struggling hotel project called the Commodore Hotel, located right next to Grand Central Station. The area was dying, investors were afraid, and the building was almost empty. But Trump saw opportunity where others saw failure. He negotiated a complex deal with the city and a major hotel chain, Hyatt, to renovate the property. In 1980, it reopened as the Grand Hyatt Hotel, a shiny symbol of New York's comeback. The project was a success, and suddenly everyone in the city knew his name. But Trump wasn't satisfied. He wanted to create something iconic, something that would represent luxury, power, and his personal brand. So he turned his eyes toward Fifth Avenue. In 1983, he opened Trump Tower, a 58-story glass skyscraper filled with offices, apartments, and high-end stores. It wasn't just a building, it was a statement. The interior sparkled with marble, gold, and chandeliers. It became a symbol of the 1980s dream: money, ambition, and success. People visited just to see the waterfall in the lobby, the golden letters on the walls, and maybe, if they were lucky, Donald Trump himself. He understood that attention was currency, and he mastered it. The media loved him. He gave interviews, appeared on talk shows, and became a familiar face in newspapers. He said what he thought, loud, direct, and confident. Some found him arrogant. Others found him inspiring. Either way, they were all talking about him. He once said, "Good publicity is preferable to bad, but from a bottom-line perspective, bad publicity is sometimes better than no publicity at all." That quote defined his approach for the next 40 years. During the 1980s, Trump expanded his empire. He bought casinos in Atlantic City, including the Trump Plaza, Trump Castle, and later the Taj Mahal. He bought yachts, airlines, and even a professional football team. His name appeared on buildings, books, and magazine covers. He was no longer just a businessman. He was a brand. People began to associate Trump with luxury and confidence. His image was everywhere: golden logos, red carpets, famous parties, and bold headlines. He cultivated an aura of success that felt larger than life. But behind the glamour, Trump faced challenges. Big projects meant big loans. His lifestyle required constant attention and high cash flow. He often borrowed millions to finance his deals. Still, he never showed fear. He once said, "I like thinking big. If you're going to be thinking anything, you might as well think big." Thinking big became his identity. He was the man who believed he could win any game because quitting was never an option. He said, "Sometimes by losing a battle, you find a new way to win the war." For Trump, every setback was just another chance to come back stronger. By the end of the 1980s, Donald Trump was one of the most famous businessmen in America. He had wealth, fame, and power, everything he dreamed of as a young man. But success also brought enemies, criticism, and risk. The higher he climbed, the more fragile the ground beneath him became. He loved the spotlight, but the spotlight can burn. Lesson from this part: image can open doors, but only substance keeps them open. Donald Trump had mastered the art of attention, but soon he would learn how quickly fortune can change. After the opening of Trump Tower in 1983, Donald Trump became a symbol of ambition in America. Every magazine wanted to feature him. Every TV show wanted to interview him. He wasn't just a businessman. He was entertainment. He appeared in newspapers almost every week. Headlines called him the real estate king of New York. He became known for his charisma, his confidence, and his larger-than-life lifestyle. In an age of excess and glamour, Donald Trump was the perfect character. He lived in a golden penthouse high above Fifth Avenue. The walls were covered in marble, the furniture in gold. He loved luxury, not quietly but loudly. He wanted people to see success, to feel it, to associate it with his name. He once said, "If you're successful, people will always criticize you. But that's okay. It's better to be talked about than to be forgotten." His fame went beyond business. He married Ivana Trump, a former model from Czechoslovakia. Together, they became one of the most glamorous couples in New York society. They had 3 children, Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric. They attended charity events, posed for magazines, and were constantly in the public eye. People loved to watch them, the perfect, rich American family. But while Donald Trump's image was everywhere, his business life was far more complicated. He was expanding too fast, borrowing massive amounts of money, and taking huge risks. Casinos, hotels, golf courses. Each new deal was bigger and riskier than the last. By the late 1980s, his name was on almost everything. Trump Plaza, Trump Castle, Trump Shuttle, Trump Taj Mahal, even Trump. The game, a board game based on his personality. He was turning his name into a product, a brand of power and wealth. He understood that fame itself could be a business. At the same time, Trump's personality divided people. Some admired his confidence and drive. Others said he was arrogant and self-centered. But one thing was clear: he knew how to stay in control of the narrative. Even when criticized, he managed to make himself the center of attention. Television loved him because he was unpredictable. He gave bold statements, used humor, and wasn't afraid to say controversial things. He knew exactly how to keep the cameras rolling. He once joked, "Sometimes you need to exaggerate a little to make people listen." He understood the power of words, not for diplomacy, but for domination. The 1980s were Trump's golden decade. He built his empire not just with buildings, but with personality. He made his name an empire of its own. But like every empire, cracks were forming beneath the surface. He was taking massive loans to fund his expansions. The economy was strong, for now, and as long as everything kept rising, he looked unstoppable. But Donald Trump was not known for moderation. He didn't believe in playing it safe. He believed in winning, always. And sometimes that belief can blind even the smartest players. By the end of the decade, his confidence had turned into overconfidence. He believed nothing could touch him. Not the banks, not the markets, not his critics. But soon, reality would hit hard. Behind the glitz and glamour, numbers were changing. The real estate market began to cool. Debt grew faster than income, and the Trump organization was standing on unstable ground. The man who had built his brand on success was about to face the hardest truth of his life: that success built too quickly can collapse just as fast. Lesson from this part: fame and power can make you feel invincible, but even the tallest towers need a solid foundation. Trump had mastered visibility, but soon he would learn about vulnerability. By the early 1990s, the golden image of Donald Trump began to crack. The man who once seemed unstoppable was suddenly facing a storm. The real estate market in the United States was collapsing. Banks were tightening credit. Luxury hotels and casinos, once symbols of glory, were now heavy burdens of debt. Trump had borrowed billions of dollars to build his empire, and now those debts were impossible to pay back. The economy had changed, and the value of his properties dropped fast. His casinos in Atlantic City were losing money, his airline was struggling, and even his hotels were not bringing in enough profit. For the first time, Donald Trump's image of success was under serious pressure. Headlines started to change. The same newspapers that once called him the King of New York were now asking, "Is Trump finished?" In 1991, his company faced major financial trouble. He had to meet with bankers and negotiate for survival. At one point, it was said that he owed over $900 million personally, and his businesses owed billions more. It was a public humiliation for a man who had built his career on the idea of winning. But Trump refused to disappear. He did what he always did. He fought back through strategy and image. He worked out deals with banks, selling some assets, restructuring loans, and convincing lenders that keeping him in charge was better than replacing him. He used his name, his personality, and his brand as bargaining power. He said later, "Sometimes the best investments are the ones you don't make." Trump also understood that the public image mattered as much as financial stability. So while his companies were in crisis, he stayed visible. He wrote books like The Art of the Comeback, appeared on television, and continued to project confidence. He never admitted defeat publicly. Instead, he turned his struggle into a story of resilience. By the mid-1990s, Trump had survived the storm. He lost much of his personal fortune, but he kept his name alive. He rebuilt step by step, focusing on licensing and branding rather than direct ownership. Instead of building every property himself, he began allowing others to use the Trump name on buildings, hotels, and golf courses in exchange for fees and royalties. This was a turning point. The Trump brand became bigger than the Trump business. His name appeared on skyscrapers he didn't own, in cities he rarely visited, and on projects managed by other companies. People didn't buy the building. They bought the idea of success that came with his name. He was turning reputation into revenue. He once said, "As long as you're going to be thinking anyway, think big." To him, survival wasn't just about money. It was about staying relevant, staying visible, and staying in control of his own story. The media, once again, played a huge role. They followed his relationships, his divorces, and his comebacks. They wrote about his style, his bold statements, and his confidence. Donald Trump had become not just a businessman, but a character, a personality the public couldn't ignore. In 1999, he even flirted with politics for the first time, briefly considering a run for president with a third party. It didn't go far, but it showed his growing interest in public influence. Still, for the moment, his main stage remained business and entertainment. By the early 2000s, he was ready for a full image revival, and he found the perfect tool for it: television. He signed on to create and host a reality show that would change everything: The Apprentice. The show was a hit. Millions of people watched each week as Trump sat behind a desk, judging young entrepreneurs competing for a job in his company. His catchphrase, "You're fired," became iconic. For many viewers, it was their first introduction to Donald Trump, the tough, confident boss who demanded results. The Apprentice turned Trump into a household name again. He had transformed failure into fame. Once again, he showed that even when fortune fades, the power of personality can rebuild an empire. Lesson from this part: failure doesn't have to be final. Sometimes surviving is a bigger victory than winning. Donald Trump learned that controlling your story, even during crisis, can become the key to a second rise. The success of The Apprentice in the early 2000s gave Donald Trump a second career. He was no longer known only in business circles. He had become a global television figure. Each week, millions watched him make decisions in his boardroom set, turning management into entertainment. The show presented him as a decisive, confident leader who valued ambition and direct results. This visibility reshaped his brand. Real estate projects that use his name, hotels, golf courses, condominiums, appeared in cities from Chicago to Dubai. In many of them, Trump was not the owner but a partner or licensor. His role was to lend the brand's image of luxury and success, collect fees, and keep public attention focused on the name. He expanded into new ventures: branded steaks, bottled water, universities, and a range of consumer products. Not all succeeded, but each kept the name circulating in the media. For Trump, recognition itself was value. He said often that visibility was the oxygen of business. Meanwhile, his public persona evolved through constant media appearances. He wrote more books about negotiation and leadership, gave motivational speeches, and remained active on television talk shows. He presented himself as a straight-talking businessman who disliked bureaucracy and admired competition. During this time, his family also became well-known. Ivanka, Donald Jr., and Eric, his children from his marriage to Ivana, worked in the family company and appeared beside him in public events. Their presence helped project the image of a modern business dynasty. In 2004, Trump married Melania Naus, a model originally from Slovenia. Their wedding drew wide media coverage and reinforced his position in celebrity culture. When their son Barron was born in 2006, the family became part of magazines and television programs that followed every step of the rich and famous. By the end of the decade, Donald Trump had turned himself into something unusual, a businessman whose most valuable product was his own image. His approach blended marketing, media, and real estate into a single brand identity. To supporters, he represented success through confidence and boldness. To critics, he symbolized excess and self-promotion. Either way, he was impossible to ignore. As social media grew, Trump adapted quickly. He joined platforms that allowed him to speak directly to audiences without relying on traditional newspapers or networks. He learned how to use short, sharp messages to grab attention, long before that became common among public figures. For him, communication was not only about information, it was about control of narrative. By the early 2010s, Trump's influence had shifted beyond business. He began commenting more on national issues, appearing at public events, and testing how his public voice resonated outside the world of entertainment. Some people viewed it as marketing. Others saw the early signs of a political interest that would later define his next chapter. Still, the lessons of this period were clear. He had experienced failure, comeback, and reinvention. He had learned that attention, if used carefully, could rebuild what money alone could not. Lesson from this part: reinvention is a form of survival. When the world changes, those who adapt their image and voice often stay relevant the longest. By the early 2010s, Donald Trump's image had already moved far beyond real estate and television. He was now seen as a voice in American public life, a man unafraid to express strong opinions about the economy, business, and leadership. His television fame had given him access to millions of people, and he learned how to use that attention to shape discussion. Trump began speaking more often about national issues. He appeared on radio and cable news programs, commenting on the state of the country, taxes, and trade. He spoke in a direct, conversational way, avoiding political language and using the tone of a businessman addressing a problem. Audiences recognized this style from The Apprentice. It was confident, informal, and emotionally charged. At the same time, social media gave him new power. It allowed him to communicate instantly, without filters or editors. He could share his thoughts directly with the public, and those short messages reached millions of followers within minutes. He quickly realized that in the modern world, attention equals influence. It was no longer necessary to own television networks. He could be the network himself. Throughout these years, Trump's activities blended entertainment, commentary, and branding. He continued to run his business empire, appear at high-profile events, and license his name to projects worldwide. He also started to test the boundaries between celebrity and political authority. He attended public gatherings, gave speeches about American industry, and positioned himself as a critic of established leaders. Supporters saw in him the energy of an outsider, someone from the world of business rather than politics. Critics viewed his growing political voice as self-promotion. Yet, both sides agreed on one point. He understood media better than almost anyone else of his generation. As his influence grew, discussions about his possible entry into politics became more frequent. He seemed to enjoy the speculation, sometimes encouraging it and sometimes dismissing it. He often said that leadership required the ability to make deals and that business principles could apply to government decisions. Whether one agreed with him or not, his approach reflected the same confidence that had defined his career from the start. During this time, Trump's family continued to play visible roles. Ivanka, Eric, and Donald Jr. became senior figures in the Trump organization, while Melania remained active in fashion and charity work. Together, they represented a modern brand family, connected by business, fame, and a recognizable last name. By the middle of the decade, Trump's transition from businessman to political personality was complete. He had built a direct channel to millions of people who admired his energy, his plain language, and his self-made image. At the same time, his presence in media and online debates grew stronger than ever. He had successfully turned decades of business lessons into a new kind of influence, one that mixed showmanship, marketing, and leadership. Whether loved or criticized, Donald Trump had once again done what he always did best: redefine himself for a new stage. He had proven that reinvention could happen not once, but many times, if one understood how attention and timing work together. Lesson from this part: adaptation is a modern form of power. In every field, from business to communication, those who learn to change their message without losing their identity can remain relevant even as the world evolves. After more than 5 decades in the public eye, Donald Trump's name had become one of the most recognizable in the world. From real estate to entertainment, from boardrooms to social media, his career was built on visibility and persistence. Even people who disagreed with him knew who he was. Few other businessmen of his generation had shaped culture in the same way. His story demonstrates how the modern age rewards presence. In earlier times, success was measured by what someone built or sold. In the 21st century, success also depends on how often people hear your name, see your image, or repeat your message. Trump understood this dynamic long before most others. He realized that communication itself could be a business, and that personality could be a brand. Over the years, his approach to leadership, negotiation, and marketing was studied in universities and business programs. Some admired his fearless decision-making and his instinct for opportunity. Others criticized his focus on image and controversy. But there was no denying the influence of his methods. He had changed how public figures, business or political, used television, publicity, and social media to build personal empires. Beyond the headlines, his story also reflects a broader theme: the constant reinvention required to survive in a fast-moving world. Trump faced financial collapse, public criticism, and unpredictable markets, yet each time he returned to relevance by reshaping his message. He was a builder not only of towers, but of narratives. He treated every setback as a chance to rewrite the plot. This ability to adapt, sometimes aggressively, sometimes dramatically, became a key part of his identity. He understood that attention could be lost in a moment, and so he worked constantly to regain it. He believed that visibility was proof of success, and that the worst sin in business was to be forgotten. His life also shows the complexity of ambition. Confidence and risk-taking can lead to achievement, but they can also isolate. Managing power, wealth, and fame requires balance, humility, and a willingness to listen. Throughout his journey, Trump's determination and self-belief remained constant, even when circumstances change around him. As the years passed, he became both a case study and a conversation. Supporters saw him as proof that persistence can break barriers. Critics saw him as a warning about ego and control. Yet together, these perspectives formed the real legacy of Donald Trump. The understanding that image, influence, and leadership are intertwined, and that each carries a price. For English learners, his story provides more than vocabulary practice. It offers a window into modern culture, media, and the psychology of success. It shows how a person can turn personal vision into a global brand, and how the same qualities that create opportunity can also invite challenge. Lesson from this part: reputation is both an asset and a responsibility. Building it takes years of effort, but maintaining it demands awareness, adaptability, and truth. Thank you for listening to this English life story. Through Donald Trump's journey, you practiced real English while exploring ambition, business, and the power of communication. If you enjoyed learning through true stories, remember to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on the bell notification so you can keep improving your listening skills every week. Keep learning, keep exploring, and remember, every story, no matter how complex, teaches us something about ourselves and the world we live in.